Hi, this is Frederick from Detroit, Berlin YouTube channel about modules, synthesizers, modular synthesizers, gear in general and music production. So welcome to this episode where I'm going to take a look at the Doepfer A-190-8, the USB/MIDI sync interface. I had this patch running. It's actually just noise going into a VCA. I'm running it through two SEM filters. I'm also running it through the wave multiplier. I did a video on that earlier, and I'm triggering everything by sending out those clock outputs from that USB MIDI sync interface, the A-190-8 from Doepfer. I'm all triggering it with the module, sending out the clock signals to the Quad ADSR. I will do an episode on that soon. Pretty simple module. This video probably won't take that long because it's a sync interface, and what that means is it has a MIDI in, it has a USB in, and it has different clock division outputs. Also has a start, a stop and a reset, and it also has a wait button, which is pretty interesting. If you press the wait button, you kind of arm the start, but the start will only start when the next measure is reached. So it has a few jumpers on the back to change a few things. It can change whether the start is a steady voltage or if it's a trigger. You can also change how this wait control voltage input works. It has a few of those jumpers on the back. Please look at the manual to configure the unit to your liking. Whether you want a start that's continuous or that just triggers, you can configure that via jumpers on the back. The patch I had running, the module of course doesn't make any sound, and also what the module does not do, although it has a USB and a MIDI input, it does not output control voltages or gate. Of course it outputs gates, it outputs a clock, a pulse signal, but not in a way that you play with a keyboard and every time you press a key it outputs a pitch and a gate. That's something a MIDI to CV converter will do. This is only a USB/MIDI to sync interface. In my system I have this big modular system and I also have a smaller performance case. Both systems has this A-190-2 in them because I think it might be not the most sexy module, but it makes life that much easier and it makes the system run like a train. I tried to not buy a second one of this module by having the smaller performance case next to the big modular and then using lots of cables to clock everything. Just bought a second one and that makes life so much easier. It's connected to my computer. When I start my computer, I run Ableton. I start the clock on Ableton. This whole system will follow. It's the link between my computer and my modular system. And the performance case, I can put it wherever I want. If I want to connect that, I can do that. Also, if I run them together, they all receive Midi and they all follow the clock like they should. So I think it's a wonderful module just for sync purposes. And yeah, I kind of not really like those Midi CV gate converters that also have a few sync options. Most of the times they're not as stable as this module is, and I think that's the most important thing when it comes to generating clock to a modular system. Let's go over the module real quickly, look at all the in and outputs, and yeah, there's only two inputs and you find them here. Is the Midi input, a 5-pin DIN Midi input, and it's the USB input. They only receive clock signals, start signals, so, and of course stop signals. So extremely simple. Let's move on. By the way, also have the LED that will blink when the clock is running. You got all these divisions. When you have a clock signal, normally when it's 4/4 and one note is a 16th, then if you take this output, the 16th note, send it to your sequencer, normally that should be everything that you need to do to run it at the same speed. Of course, some synthesizers and some modules can also be configured a little bit differently. If you have a module running at 16th notes, then probably it won't have any swing. If you have modules with swing, you can probably run them at 96 in order to get a use of the swing. Also got 32 if you want your sequence to run faster. You can use the 32. Normal speed should be 16 most of the times. And you got half speed, which is 8. And then you got actually, the 1. And that's sometimes useful maybe to do a reset or something like that. Because every 16 notes it will trigger. Those are all outputs, different divisions, clock divisions, I would say. And then you have a button, the wait button. If you press the wait button, the module will wait until the start fires to start the sequence until the next measure is reached. So if you're in Ableton and there is something running and you want to start the sequence on the next measure, press the wait button and the start will begin when the next measure is reached. Of course, if you start the sequence in Ableton at 0, you just started, then the sequence just begins to run. And I think it really follows nicely. I never had any problems with syncing with this module, so that's a big plus. You got the wait input. You can send a control voltage to that wait input to do the same thing as if you would just press the wait button. You got a reset out. So if you want to reset, for instance, I'm using the ERM Midi clock. I can do a reset, send a reset with that Midi clock device. If I send that reset, the reset will be sent by the device at the next measure. That means that if the reset is fired, everything will be reset again. The sequences will restart if it's configured, like it should. If you have the reset out, going to the sequencer reset in. If you reset the sequence, then it automatically resets the sequencer. In live situations, that can be one side a lifesaver, at the second side it can mess things up a little bit. If you have a nice groove going and the sequence is really nice, it has to switch a little bit, but it's a nice sequence. If you then resets, it will reset the sequence and it will be back like it was in the beginning of your set, which might not be as wanted as you might think. And when the sequence is deviating to a position that is not groovy, if you reset, it will be back how it was. So then it is really useful, and I tend to use it quite a lot when doing live stuff. You got the reset out, then you got the stop, everything stops, and you got the start to start your sequencers. When you're using this module, you can use only the 16 notes, send it to a multiple, then you send it to various sequencers. You can also, if those sequencers you have in your system accept different divisions, can take another divisions, and then you actually can output multiple different divisions to various sequencers, and they will all run at the same speed if they're configured correctly to the right speed. And I think that is nice because you got multiple outputs. If you use those multiple outputs in a good way, if you put them to good use, you have less cables, less multiples, and that would be a preferred situation, I would say. You can also, of course, run sequencers at different speeds. Some sequencers you don't have to use 16th. You can do it with half time, I would say. So these options are there, so why not use it in that regard? I don't think it's necessary to go over some sounds because the module does not produce sound. Maybe if you run a sequence fast enough and you take the highest clock out, you can maybe get to audio rate. I don't know, I'm actually not going to try. Although now I'm tempted, but I'm not going to try that. Would like to conclude this episode already, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and take a look at my Patreon page if you really want to support me even more. So that would be highly appreciated, and I would also like to thank you for watching. Goodbye, and hope to see you next time.